seven states have to do today. Professor Glennon, thanks so much.
A pleasure to chat with you, Robin.
And if you live in that area and you depend on the Colorado River, we'd love to hear from you. HereAndNow.org.
Saving money is hard, but there's one thing that can help: automate it.
The right way to do it is the easy way to do it. And the easy way to do it is through payroll deduction, because the money you never see is the money that you're much less likely to miss.
I'm Ari Shapiro, the best way to start saving and why it works, this afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
All Things Considered begins at 4 today on WHYY.
I'm Jack Lepiarz. The European Parliament is calling on member states to recognize Venezuela's opposition leader as the country's legitimate president. Juan Guaido has declared himself interim president, even though Nicolás Maduro still holds that position. More than 24 countries, including the U.S., have recognized Guaido as Venezuela's leader. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is holding firm against any funding for the president's proposed border wall. Pelosi made those comments a day after talks got underway to avoid another government shutdown in mid-February. The president on Twitter says Republican negotiators are wasting their time. U.S. mortgage rates are edging higher after weeks of declines or holding steady. Freddie Mac reports the average 30-year fixed-rate loans now stand at 4.46%, up from 4.45% last week. You're listening to Here and Now.
This is WHYY at 1:19. Ahead in about 15 minutes, Jeremy Hobson brings us up to speed on U.S.-China trade talks. President Trump says he's open to a meeting with Chinese leader Xi. Also, the daughter of Albert Speer, Hitler's war production minister, is fighting anti-Semitism. The stories are still to come on WHYY, your NPR member station. Supporting WHYY Walnut Street Theater. Now on stage, Tony Award winner Ken Ludwig's A Comedy of Tenors. A comedy filled with slamming doors, unbridled passion, and madcap hilarity on an operatic scale. Tickets at walnutstreettheater.org. And Lourdes Cardiology has more than 100 heart experts across the area, ready to provide top-quality cardiac care. It's just one way they offer Cardi Access at Lourdes Cardiology, the heart hospital, lourdescardiology.net. Funding for Here and Now comes from WBUR Boston and your NPR station. And from Constant Contact. Their automation features let customers automatically send welcome and birthday emails, as well as autoresponders when users take an action. Learn more at ConstantContact.com. It's Here and Now. In 1952, Ernest Hemingway published The Old Man and the Sea, the story of the down-on-his-luck Cuban fisherman Santiago and his desperate attempt to catch a marlin after 85 days without one. It won the Pulitzer, helped Hemingway win the Nobel a few years later. Of Old Man and the Sea, Faulkner wrote, his best. Time may show it to be the single best piece of any of us. Well, in 1958, it was made into a John Sturges film starring Spencer Tracy. In this scene, Tracy, as Santiago, spools out a line with bait to the marlin taunting him below.
Eat them, fish. Eat them. Please eat them. How fresh they are. And you down deep in that cold water in the dark.
Well, Hemingway hated the movie, as he told his friend, the playwright A.E. Hotchner. Years before, Hemingway had handed Hotchner some papers and asked him to take a look at what turned out to be Old Man and the Sea. As they left the movie theater, Hemingway turned to Hotch, as he called him, and said, maybe one day you can do better. That was 61 years ago. A.E. Hotchner is now 101. His stage version of The Old Man and the Sea will open at the Pittsburgh Playhouse tomorrow in partnership with RWS Production. And A.E. Hotchner joins us now from his home in Connecticut. You say I can call you Hotch, just like Hemingway did?
That's right. Very glad to be with you.
Well, we're so thrilled to speak with you. Also author, by the way, of several biographies of Hemingway. And also joining us from Pittsburgh, A.E.'s son, Tim. Tim, you collaborated on this adaptation. Welcome to you as well.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
And Hotch, again, I can't get used to calling you the same thing Hemingway did, but when he handed you those papers, The manuscript had just been typed up by his wife. What did you think when you read it?
Well, we had just had dinner, and I had gone into my guest house, and he came in with a sheaf of typewritten manuscript in his hand, and he said, I just finished this. Mary typed it up, and would you like to take a look at it? I said, sure, leave it. And I must say, I was transported. Imagine for the first time seeing these wrinkled up pages and reading what would become an epic of American literature. A few weeks later, he called and said Life magazine wants to publish it in one issue, but I wonder if I should save it to do a bigger book about the sea. And I said, well, you told me one of the golden rules of freelancing is if you write something and they want to publish it, grab the money and run. So he did. And let's go about 5 years later. And he's come to New York for the World Series, but Old Man on the Sea has just been made into a movie with Spencer Tracy. And we're walking down Park Avenue, and he said, why don't we go and take a look at it? Which we did. And we lasted about 10 or 12 minutes, and he turned to me and said, ready to go? And I said, sure. So we left, and he said, you know, you write something, and you like it, and over the years it does well. And then they do this to it. It's like pissing in your father's beer.
Oh, jeez, he did.
So, well, Ernest was rather direct, and he said, maybe someday you'll take a shot at it. So it took me a long time. I wrote my biography of Papa Hemingway. I did that 5 years after he died. But over the years, I kept thinking about his saying, why don't you take a shot at it? And finally, I decided I would. And it took me 4 or 5 years to get the version that I liked. And I brought my son into it. And we have high hopes.
Well, we spent about 2 months on it before rehearsal. It was really kind of reimagining the story because, you know, it's such a difficult one to put on stage. Obviously, it works beautifully as a book.
Yeah.
And so we really had to look at it, and my father had the great idea of putting Hemingway in the piece.
In the stage version that's about to be, seen in Pittsburgh, Hemingway is writing the story at a desk as it's happening. And let's remind people, this is Santiago, this poor Job-like fisherman. When he finally does haul in this huge marlin, his catch, it's eaten by sharks.
You understand that this book has become such a treasure. It's really a great example of how one man's devotion to the cause of his life, which is the sea, is everybody's devotion to some cause. This old man and his attitude and his achievement, and yet he falls short. But in a way that touches the course of everyone's life. That's really what goes on the stage.
It was also, it had been 11 years since Hemingway wrote For Whom the Bell Tolls, and he had a lot to prove at this time in his career as well.
He had previously, not very long before, written a novel called Across the River and Into the Trees. And for the first